I've heard some crazy stories about like what people have made for war and stuff. I'm excited to check this out and see what we got in this.
These are not dead or wounded soldiers being pulled out the battlefield. They're alive and well, and in fact heading into combat while lying inside torpedo shells.
Huh?
This is the bouncing bomb, and rumor has it, it was feared even more than a bouncing tire.
Oh no!
Then there was a flying platform to get soldiers high up in the sky. I mean, why slide when you can fly? And why bounce when you can roll? Like the wheel of death that almost killed the same admirals that were there to give the project a thumbs up.
Of course it did.
And finally, there's the first aircraft that could both hover like a chopper and fly like an airplane. Except for no one dared to fly it.
Right, okay,
so here are
interesting.
5 inventions that don't slide, bounce, fly, roll, and hover anymore.
That bouncing bomb is mad.
During World War II, General John O'Daniel, the commander of the 3rd Infantry Division, came up with what he thought was an ingenious idea.
Aye.
Torpedoes captured from Italians were cut in half and attached to form sleds to pull 12 soldiers behind a tank. O'Daniel called them battle sleds, and they were to be used to transport troops into heavily defended positions. Instead of running behind a tank, an infantry squad could accompany the tank without being exposed to small firearms.
It's not too bad,
Similar
to be fair.
The armored sleds of the Red Army, where a single sled could carry soldiers over the snow and also be used by 3 or 4 people to take cover.
Yeah, it's actually not a bad
But
idea.
O'Daniel's battle sleds had more functionality. Soldiers were pulled forward in the path made by the tank's tracks, which would eliminate the risk of stepping over anti-personnel mines.
Right, okay.
Most importantly, in an area with tall bushes, they could be transported into the battlefield without being noticed.
Yo, that's actually pretty sick.
One soldier in the front could simply pull a release wire, which would detach the sled from the tank, allowing soldiers to remain hidden until they ambushed the enemy. Even though all 360 sleds produced saw battle in 1944, there were some problems.
What is it?
Rough terrain and ditches made the ride impossible, and the failure of the release mechanism in some instances made the battle sleds not reliable.
Right, okay.
These issues and the introduction
across field and stuff, it's not a bad invention, I can't lie.
of armored personnel carriers forced the battle sleds to slide into history books. But why drag soldiers inside sleds on the ground
when
you could make them fly?
Okay.
In the early 1950s, the US Army was looking to develop a flying machine to be used as a reconnaissance platform, where soldiers could quickly rise up for observation and even to shoot at the enemy. But there was a problem. At the time, the US Army didn't have the required government permits to run its own aviation development programs. So the project was overseen by the US Navy's Office of Naval Research.
Hey, look, it doesn't look like a good idea, man, because it's going to be wobbling, you're going to be shooting, they're going to be shooting at you, they're probably going to shoot you down, like, instantly, let's be honest. Some
prototypes were marked as US Navy and some as US Army. With funding from the Army, the Hiller Aircraft Company developed VZ-1 Pawnee, which first flew in 1954.
It's a cool idea, but
the platform's innovation was a duct surrounding its counter-rotating propellers. The air drawn over the rim of the duct provided 40% of the aircraft thrust, with the remaining 60% created by the propellers inside. The steering was also revolutionary. The pilot could simply lean to one side or the other in order to move the platform in that direction.
Yo, I can't lie. Can't they make this for like commercial use? Can't we have these to get around and stuff?
But after evaluations, the US Army considered the platform to be impractical as a combat vehicle.
Yeah, 100%.
It had limited speed and could only fly with help from ground effect, which meant it could only fly so high.
And it would just get shot down
I think it was also
instantly.
a certified death trap.
Yeah.
Easy targets for 100%. The enemy, since both the platform and the pilot were quite vulnerable to be shot at.
Yeah, 100%.
But the VZ-1 wasn't the only vertical takeoff and landing craft with counter-rotating propellers that the US Navy was involved in.
I want to see the bouncing bomb.
Before the invention of short takeoff and vertical takeoff aircraft, like F-35s and Harriers, the US Navy was interested in a propeller-driven fighter aircraft that could be launched from a small warship. The result of their cooperation with Convair was XFY Pogo, a delta-wing propeller plane powered by a turboprop engine which could fly and land on its tail. it had counter-rotating propellers, so the engine wouldn't turn the airplane instead. Being an unusual experimental airplane, no pilot wanted to risk flying it. But a Convair engineered test pilot and Marine Reserve officer, Lieutenant Colonel J.F. Skeet Coleman, volunteered for the job. He had to use a special ladder to get into the cockpit and then sit in facing the sky. Pogo's first test flight happened in August of 1954, where the airplane only took off vertically, hovered about 20 feet off the ground, and landed back on its tail. This was the first free vertical takeoff in history done by a fighter plane.
Not bad.
But the first conversion from vertical to horizontal flight took place 3 months later, in November of that year, with over 3,000 officials watching intently.
The thing is, right, I don't really get the point of why you want to do this. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got... Then again, back then, they probably thought it was a really good idea.
First flight ever,
it didn't make sense
to me. The pilot flew both aerodynamically and in a hover.
Like, what is the benefit
of flying up like that? The most difficult part was landing Pogo. Once back in vertical position, the pilot had to rely on the helicopters flying nearby as a guide to adjust his rate of descent, and had to look over his shoulder to spot his landing, which he managed to do perfectly. Around the same time, the U.S. Air Force was also experimenting with something similar, a VTOL jet aircraft.
What the?
It was called X-13, which would take off while hanging from a platform.
That was
then
so
switch
weird.
from vertical to horizontal flight and then hang back onto the platform. The
I can't lie, it
X-13
is
had
cool.
a maximum speed well below Mach 1, just like Pogo.
I don't understand the benefits
With more
of
testing,
it flying
even
up
though
like
the concept was proven to work, it wasn't quite feasible for a variety of reasons. For instance, the pilot had to look back behind himself during landing to properly stabilize the aircraft, which could be accomplished only by the most experienced pilots. Not to mention the risks with landing Pogo on a moving ship in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, true.
On top of
Very,
that,
very true.
regular fighter jets had top speeds that approached Mach 2, and Pogo, with a top speed below Mach 1, was at a great disadvantage. So only 2 years after its first flight, Pogo was cancelled.
I'm not surprised.
But enough about American
I'm not surprised.
innovations. It's time for some British engineering. When it comes to launching explosives from water toward land,
don't tell me the British made the bouncing bomb. Please.
Brits had a few tricks up their sleeve, and the Wheel of Death, formerly known as the Great Pengendrum, was one of them.
Okay, it's not the bouncing bomb.
The Great Pengendrum was made up of a pair of wheels with rockets attached to them, like a fireworks pinwheel, but loaded with 4,000 pounds of explosives. The secret weapon was to be used during D-Day, where hundreds of them would be launched from landing craft. They would then roll over water onto the beach, where they would explode upon hitting fortified German positions along the Nazis' Atlantic Wall. Luckily, before going all in, the Brits brought a couple of Pengendrums to the beach to test them out, which proved the Great Pengendrum to be completely out of control.
Did it roll
Even
back?
though the Pengendrum could move at over 60 miles per hour, it was quite sensitive to the thrust of the rockets. Even if one rocket failed on one side, the Pengendrum would start turning in that direction, which meant it could end up anywhere. And it did.
Oh no!
During its final test, the wheel flipped on its side, made a U-turn, and headed toward a viewing panel where admirals and generals were sitting, forcing them to run. The Great Pengendrum never became operational, but it did go down in my books as the only thing that ever chased a dog on a beach. Which brings us to the next.
Yo, that is so mad, bro. Imagine, like, you've got 100 of these into battle. You're like, yo, we're gonna release these wheels of death, man, and then they just come back at you. Oh no!
And final British marvel, the bouncing bomb.
Wait, the British made the bats.
The invention of the bouncing bomb goes back to the beginning of World War II, when British were looking for a way to destroy enemy dams and battleships. A traditional method of destroying such targets was to use torpedoes, but underwater obstacles like torpedo nets would prevent such attacks from succeeding. So the British came up with the bouncing bomb, which was designed to bounce on the surface of water. Upon impacting the dam, the bomb would sink and explode underwater at a predetermined depth. since underwater explosions can cause much more damage than a detonation in the air.
Oh no.
But these bombs could even bounce off the ground. In preparation for the drop, a 500 rounds per minute backspin was added to the bomb while still inside the aircraft. Spinning improved the bouncing across the water, but the backspin ensured that after hitting its target, the bouncing bomb would move back towards the surface as it sank. But dropping these bombs was very risky, since they had to be dropped about 60 feet off the surface.
Oh wow.
This put the pilots in danger, as bombs could bounce back and hit the aircraft before the pilots had enough time to move away. During operation...
You know what? Like, it seemed like laughable to begin with, but then he started making it to make sense, you know what I mean? Like the bouncing bombs, they bounce it to the people, right? But then I was waiting for the catch, and yeah, it just bounces back up and it can hit the plane. That's... Yeah, yikes.
Chastised in 1943, the Royal Air Force used bouncing bombs to destroy 2 German dams and damage many more, which caused widespread flooding that killed 600 Germans and over 1,000 Soviets who were being used as forced laborers.
Wow.
Out of the 19 Royal Air Force aircraft that were involved in the attacks, only 11 made it back, meaning that 53 of the 133 aircrew were killed. A casualty rate of almost 40%.
Oh, that's not good. Wait, by their
None
own
of
bouncing
these
bombs?
inventions are in use today. But if you think any of these or any other old prototypes can be adapted to today's warfare, we would love to hear your comments.
What is that? Really interesting video. I actually enjoyed that a lot. Of course, the British made 2 of the most crazy inventions. That doesn't surprise me. I actually enjoy watching these videos. If you guys got any videos you want me to check out, let me know in the comment section below. Hopefully you guys are enjoying. If you are, make sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe. It really helps me and helps the channel out. And I'll see you all in the next video.